was sent here.
Okay. Sorry. Let's. We all set? Sorry. It's okay. Not a big deal. All right. So since we're hybrid, roll call vote to call to order. Endry.
Off mute.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Here.
Joe McDonough.
Here.
John Sullivan.
Here.
Mark Zero.
Here.
Marianne Downing.
Here.
I tried to throw a microphone at. And Joe Carnahan here. All right. So as always, we start out with an opportunity for public comment. I don't see any members of the public other than people who are here to talk about CPA, who will presumably get a chance to speak in just a moment. So let's move along to liaison reports now. Anyone want to go first? Marianne, go ahead.
Oh,
But they make us use the mics now.
Okay, so my only update, I guess, is from last night's select board meeting that they finally settled on a number. And I believe, please correct me, it's 1.14 is what they voted for the tax split. So it's an increase from the 1.11. And what was unique about the vote was, so 2 select board members had to recuse themselves. And without agreement, unanimous agreement of the other 3, there would have had to been all these state issues, and luckily they all did come to an agreement. But to me, it's beyond our ken, but it points to a weakness in the charter. I mean, what if we had multiple select board members that had to recuse themselves? Would we be able to have a vote every year? So I'm just curious, what would have happened?
It's changing in the new charter that we're doing, so.
So that'll be fixed. Okay, good, thanks.
And there is a clause, the rule of necessity, that as I went through my conflict of interest training, came across that particular term, which I think might have applied here. That if
it didn't apply to this particular situation, but generally it would. If they were 3 members that were conflicted, it would have applied. But because 3 members were able to vote, it didn't apply. So
it only applies when you don't have quorum.
Right.
Is that right?
And just, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I think they approved the trash contract in between these 2 meetings.
Yes.
And that was going to be back with Republic. I don't know the terms, but they did finally approve that, and it will be, the first year we'll still have every week recycling, that I recall. But the fees are going up, so throw your bulk stuff out now.
All right, Jeffrey?
my only comment was from the school committee that they thanked us for voting to recommend the 3% increase for the budget, but they still have some tough work to do to fit it in.
Understood. Mark, go ahead.
I think in the select board, they also announced there was a $100,000 grant towards the pickleball courts.
yeah, Parkway. Yeah.
So was that kind of a surprise at that?
Well, we knew we would apply for it, but we were unsure that we would get it, especially for pickleball. A lot of times they wouldn't give that kind of grant for pickleball, but they did. So that's an extra $100,000 that we're going to get now. So
Does that impact sharing our debt at all?
we would borrow less.
All right,
That was going to be my question. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Every little bit counts.
Sharon, you probably have to use the mic too. I got scolded for this at the last time we were in this room, so it's fine. Now I'm attentive to it. All right, anyone else with a liaison report? I'm not going to report on the CPA study committee because that's on the agenda immediately after this. So, all right, not seeing anything else. So the first thing on our agenda tonight is we are finally getting our belated presentation from the CPA study committee. We have, of course, I'm on that committee, but I wanted to make sure we had 2 people who are not me to talk about it here. So we have Sandy and Kate. If you guys want to come up to the podium or however you want to do this in terms of, you have to use the mic too, how to make the rules. Sandy knows you can't hear people on Zoom if they don't use the mic.
Hi folks, I'm Sandy Matethia, and with me is Kate Ketmer. and we are.
Is that mic turned on?
How's that? Better? Yeah, the light's on.
Lights
so.
on.
Okay.
That's a good sign.
Bring it down any closer. I'm Sandy Mattathier, and with me is Kate Kettner, and we are 2 of 7 members of the ad hoc CPA, or Community Preservation Act Study Committee. And Joe is our esteemed chairman, and we've been in existence for about a year and a half now, doing a lot of background research, some of which we'll summarize for you this evening. So I just wanted to start by explaining, at least in summary fashion, what the Community Preservation Act is, who we as a study committee are, and what our charge is. The CPA is a state law which has been kicking around for over 20 years, and a little over, or somewhat over, half the municipalities in Massachusetts have adopted it. I think conceptually, it's kind of easy to understand as sort of a financing tool for dedicated spending purposes. The financing is something, or the funds, I should say, that come through the Community Preservation Act come from 3 different sources. One is a local surcharge, revenues raised locally. A second is a state match, which is on the order of 20 to 25% of the monies raised locally. And then thirdly is something which is kind of hard to quantify, but I call it third-party sources of funds, such as government grants, nonprofit types of donations, some public-private partnerships type things. And together, those 3 sources of fund make up a pot, which is dedicated locally to 3 types of mostly capital expenditures in 3 different areas. One is open space and recreation. That's a combined 1 bucket area. Second one is affordable housing, and the third is historic preservation. By law, each of those 3 areas, which are bulleted in the slide, are required to get 10% annually of the funds in the pot, with the other 70% at the discretion of the municipality in terms of where they ultimately are where they go. So, next slide. Our charge is to study the merits of the Community Preservation Act and whether or not we think it should be adopted locally, and then to formulate the way it would be adopted given local considerations. And as indicated in the bullets, we have representatives from conservation, recreation, historic preservation, and housing, as well as finance and the select board. And we often refer to these subject areas as the pillars of our group. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So what we're in the process of doing is determining whether or not we think this is a good idea, and to put together the elements of a proposal and to serve that up to decision makers, and for them to make a decision as to whether or not it's ultimately adopted. And that decision-making process involves several steps flowing from the proposal or the recommendation that we might put forward, first up to the select board, and then in turn, assuming it passes through there to town meeting, and then to the voters at a general election. Each town meeting and the ballot question being determined by majority vote. So what have we been doing for the last year plus? A lot of due diligence. We have looked back at one prior effort in Reading to adopt CPA, which came in 2002. It was at the same time that the high school was subject to an override, and it lost by 1 or 2% of the vote at that point in time. We've been speaking with some of our peer communities who have had recent experience in CPA adoption, Natick primarily in Winchester, also to a degree Tewksbury and Arlington. We've consulted with an umbrella organization at the state level which services CPA communities called the Community Preservation Coalition, which has a lot of data and good experience to offer. We're considering what the options are under CPA for how much money or at what rate we would propose as a local surcharge. The law allows a range of 0.5% to 3% on top of a property tax bill. And I'll get into that a little bit more in terms of what the committee's thinking is. We also have some numbers for you tonight later in the packet, which we'll talk to on those slides in terms of how that would be raised from local taxpayers and what the impact on them would be. I'm going to turn it to Kate here next to give you an idea, sort of by way of illustration, as to what types of things in each of these three buckets, if you will, might be funded with CPA monies.
Thanks, Sandy. So the pillars that Sandy talked about, the first one up on the slide there is open space preservation. Under consideration for different projects that we could do with these funds is Grove Street lots, town forest entrance improvements there, removal of dead red pines in the town forest, invasive species control at the Bear Meadow area, improvements to the Matera cabin, a community garden, and construction of new trails and boardwalks. And like I said, this could also, we could be eligible for match funds from state and federal grants for this as well. Another pillar is recreation. Just as a PS, I'm the recreation liaison to this committee. Currently, well, Birch Meadow project, we've completed phase 1 down at Birch Meadow. We're in the middle of phase 2 right now. Both of those projects which would be eligible for funding under this. Playground repairs and updates, tennis, basketball, pickleball courts, maintenance and/or construction, acquisition of lands for recreation purposes. Also, this could, these types of projects, we'd be eligible for match and fundraising from Reading sports boosters, that sort of thing. Another pillar is the historic preservation component. Sample of buildings in this category eligible would be the Pleasant Street Center, Reading Town Hall, Joshua Eaton and Parker Schools, and of course our library. Other projects that would be eligible would be the purchase, creation, and installation of historic markers, and possibly an archivist to organize, catalog, and make documents, pictures available online. And then the last component, the last pillar, would be affordable housing, which Reading is in need of. 29% of Reading households are cost burdened, meaning 30% of their gross income is spent on rent or mortgage. Currently, there's a 3-year waiting list for affordable housing for veterans, and the wait list for other citizens is nearly 10 years. So the demand is there for affordable housing. And just lastly, on the affordable housing, you know, if the town decides to purchase properties for affordable housing, because we would be in, because we are a CPA community, or would be a CPA community, we would, we would qualify for some match funding. And as it says there, we could also borrow against these CPA funds as well, serve as collateral. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. So just a quick digression on some of the things that Kate was saying is that once the law is adopted, there's a whole administrative structure that gets put into place, which is the way that these funds are decided as to whether or not yay or nay. And that is the statute provides a committee to be made up of certain statutory members and then some elected members. They make recommendations to town meeting what projects deserve to be funded and what amount, and town meeting decides whether to do that or not. So the projects that Kate mentioned are just ideas that have been, the committee has compiled just to give you a sense as to what things might be in the offing or being proposed for funding. So this slide is an attempt to kind of give you a feel for the range of options that the committee is considering and what the monies raised under those different options might be. As you'll note, we've got 0.5 to 1.5%. The law allows us to go up to 3%. The committee, generally speaking, is of the mind that we should take the lower end of the range, thinking that anything more might be an overreach and might put the matter into a greater conflict, if you will, politically. One of the takeaways from this slide is that the second and third rows here give you an indication of the last 5 years of the state match, varying between 14 and almost 40%. For, I guess, discussion purposes, you might assume 20-25% is going to be the norm. That's all a function of what monies go into the estate fund, which all those monies come from the Registry of Deeds in terms of different instruments that are recorded. There's a fee attached to the recording, and all those monies go into a state fund that in turn is dispersed to the communities that have adopted CPA. Reading obviously antes into that fund through real estate transactions in town, but because it doesn't have CPA, it's not getting its share of any of those monies back. For purposes of presenting this slide, I kind of gravitate to the middle column, and in fact the middle box, showing in round terms something on the order of $1 million that would be yielded between the 900,000 and 1.1 million under a 1% surcharge rate. And the reason why I focus on that is because, and I'm going to flip to the next slide now, is because the $1 million that would be raised by a 1% surcharge, again, coming 80% local, 20% state, is about the level that the town has spent on CPA eligible projects over the last 10 years. That statement, which I just made, is courtesy of Joe, who did all the vetting of the last 10 years of operating budgets and sorted out from those budgets the projects or the funding that would have been going to projects that are CPA eligible. So what we are sort of circling around here is a 1% surcharge that approximates the spend level the town has put in place for these types of things over the last 10 years. So again, if you focus for a second on the 1% surcharge rate, what you'll notice is that for the median assessed value home in Reading, that it's somewhere in the vicinity of $100 a year, which would be the add-on, if you will, to the property tax bill, were the 1% rate to apply. One footnote on this chart is that it assumes that, as the statute allows, that there is the first $100,000 of assessed value, which is being exempted. as something that the committee, I think, is of a mind to put in place.
The numbers that you had, that round $1 million, does that include the exemption for the first 100,000?
Let me go back a slide, just make double check.
I'll take that one since I made the slide. Yes.
Yes.
This was actually I contacted Victor, the town assessor, and he actually sent me a spreadsheet of the assessed value of every property in Reading. And so I was able to, I worked out a bunch of different things, but to simplify things, this is residential only. And then on this slide, and then the following slide is actually even more specific. It's single family homes, because we're looking at sort of, that is typically what people look at when they're trying to assess tax impact of things. That's the benchmark they use.
And
But
all
yes.
these numbers are counted, exempting the first 100,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The exemption that we would also consider, but is not reflected in these numbers, so it would make all these numbers slightly smaller in terms of the totals, is we can adopt exemptions for low-income property owners and for low and moderate-income senior property owners, which I think we are likely to recommend. That would make those roughly 1% smaller according to the Community Preservation Coalition's data. But we don't know exactly, because everyone's property value is public record. Everyone's income is very much not.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mary.
also, there's an option there for commercial properties to be exempted, which I think we've assumed.
Yeah.
That was actually part of my question, is you only show not the slide of the range of cost being considered, but the amount collected. You were only showing what would be collected from a surcharge on residential properties?
Yes, not commercial.
Why not? Why not commercial?
It was an assumption that was made for purposes of coming up with the numbers. We haven't formally voted on that. I think the thinking is that commercial tax base is so minimal compared to the residential that it wouldn't make a heck of a lot of a difference which way we went, but we haven't yet decided on that.
But I mean, even with, in the select board discussion last night, people who were supporting increasing the split were talking about, if we do that, we're going to get lots and lots from our large commercial, right? So if you're going to get lots and lots, then 1% of, the assessment on Jordan's or the assessment on Home Depot would add significantly to this total, would it not?
Well, I think that, Joe, I don't know if you did it with and without.
I did it without. Hold on, let me see. I think I want to say even shared this information with the committee a while ago when I first did it, because I was so darn proud of myself for my spreadsheets. But let me go find this 1 second. Revenue analysis.
While Joe was doing that, the one other footnote on the $1 million, if you will, here, is that it doesn't include any of those third-party sources of funds, which I made reference to, and Kate as well. And in some cases, particularly housing, those are extremely significant. We've got a couple of people on our study committee that do a lot of this work in metropolitan Boston. And some of the multipliers that they're able to get on affordable housing projects are pretty impressive. They range from 10 to 15 times multiplier. And those are just funds that are out there. And if you're doing that type of work, you can access them.
Well, Joe was looking up, so just to clarify, are we allowed to do something that maybe we can't do with residential taxes, where we could say businesses assessed at less than 2 million, and I'm making that up, could be treated like residences to have the first 100K exempted, but larger businesses wouldn't? Or I don't know, are we allowed to do that?
Not that I know of. I think I think the statute talks about commercial versus residential. I don't think there's a sliding scale or a.
So that, I'm seeing it says 9, but.
Yeah, no, it is one of the properties of the Community Preservation Act that maybe is one of my least favorites, is that there is a very short list of exemptions that you are allowed to offer and not anything else. So in 2002, $100,000 was a significant share of your property value, and now it's not. But they haven't changed it. They don't have, you can give the $100,000 exemption to residential, commercial, both, neither, and you can also exempt commercial entirely if you wish. And you do see the range. In other communities, they do everything from the one extreme of exempting commercial, which is what the numbers on the screen reflect, versus the other extreme of making sure to not give the commercial the extra 100,000 because they are, looking to tax residents less and business more. I want to answer Marion's question about how much money it is. For fiscal year 25, instead of raising $790,000, if we included commercial, it would have been $841, so a difference of $50,000 roughly.
I guess it isn't much.
So it's not that huge. I mean, we are talking about 1%. So 1% of, that tells me that our commercial taxes are, in the order of $5 million, which actually kind of checks out. 1% of $5 million would be 50,000. All right, Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, just on the state match, you've got 21, it was 39%, last year 14%.
Yeah.
What has the trend been? Like, do you have, has it been going down or is it?
Yes, but that match is a function of two things. One is the level of real estate activity and the amount of documents and instruments that are being recorded at the registry. So when you have high mortgage rates, for example, houses that are relatively unaffordable for entry-level buyers, the combination, where the housing market is kind of stuck, the transactions are not as they used to be, and therefore the fees are not rolling in. We're raised to come down. There presumably would be an uptick in transactions and fees. The other thing, which is a little bit less of a factor, but still, is the number of communities that are tapping into that fund. So as that number goes up, the share, if you will, for each goes down. So over time, more and more communities have come in. Real estate has gone up and down and up and down. And I guess the reason for those two rows was to try and give you a feel for recent history. Last year was among, I think, the lowest in.
I think FY25 was, I should look this up. It was definitely higher than, it was 19. Okay, so FY25 trended up a bit. Again, because interest rates probably weren't as brutal as the previous year.
23?
No, FY25. When I made this slide, the FY25 state match had not been announced.
It was 19.
It was 19, yes.
Do you know what was it in 23?
I don't know off the top of my head. But these were the highest and lowest values that I could find in the last 10 years. And going back any further than that is kind of nonsense because, as Sandy said, when there weren't as many communities in it, the matches were higher. First 2 years, it was 100% match. Anyway. Yeah, Joe.
Just to clarify, like when you said this would allow us to potentially qualify for more grants, like how's that work? Just because this is part of the CPA funding or just the project itself? Like, for instance,
it works differently under different programs and in different areas, but for open space and I'll just kind of give you a sampling of the way I understand it to be with limited experience. Open space there's a lot of federal and state grant programs that say if you have a project that meets the qualifications, you can presumably tap into funds. And there's quite a bit of money out there for that. Recreation, where we see it most, is with private, like booster type clubs that themselves fund, raise monies for certain projects and certainly would be incented to do that type of thing were seed money to be available from the CPA fund. Historic is not quite evident to me where that comes from, but there are public-private partnerships that offer up in that regard. And affordable housing is just chock full of public money that's waiting to be tapped. And so when you have a fund that enables a project like that, and you can even bond many of these things against the CPA fund, you can really, as I say, goose the amount of money that goes into those things by tapping into those sources. And I'm relying a little bit on what I'm saying here, or a lot on what I'm saying here, based on people who are expert in the field, and they work it every day, and they're on the committee, and this is what they've told us repeatedly.
Okay.
So,
And then do you have to spend down X amount of money each year, like
no,
30% of it?
no, you can reserve, you can bank it, so it can stay in the fund for, say, a later day or a bigger project.
Okay, and then back to your Grove Street Lot project. Like if we want to put $2.5 million against that, we only had $1 million for that year. I guess the point is you could borrow against that.
You could.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Interesting, thanks.
Go ahead, John. At some point, we're in the presentation, but yes, go ahead.
There's nothing that prevents us from using this money on stuff that we would have been spending money on otherwise.
Well, I think it's the Department of Revenue ruling, as I recall, that says if you've decided to spend money on a particular project before, you can't later go back and tap CPA for it.
Okay, but going forward, if we're going to add
forward,
more pickleball courts or more playgrounds, whatever, we can use this for that, even if we would have done it without the CPA?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And the beauty of it is that either you're getting other sources of money to come in on top of locally raised money, or you can actually save that money by having only part of it paid locally. So one way or the other, from a financial standpoint, it seems like it's hard to think that's a losing proposition. And in some cases, there's an awful lot to gain.
Any other questions before we continue?
We just have a couple more slides to wrap it up.
More left. Yeah, go ahead.
Me? Okay. Excuse me. Okay, what's next? So our intention is for this upcoming town meeting to present an informational report. January or February of '26, we hope to have a tighter report to present to the select board. April 26th, go to town meeting then. And that's basically asking town meeting whether or not we should put this to the citizens of the town for a vote. And that election, that would be the November 26th election, a year from now. And then if approved, town meeting would then vote on creating a community preservation committee. And then town meeting in April 28 would vote on the first allocation of CPA funds. And July of '28 would be the first distribution of CPA funds. So not a quick process, but so I guess what we're asking tonight is, it says vote on a future meeting on whether your committee or organization would support the recommendation of CPA. We have been going around to as many town boards, organizations, subcommittees, and doing a presentation like this and just trying to get some input from the town committees as to how they feel about this concept and whether it would be worthwhile for it to go before a townwide election for approval.
I'll point out that the first bullet here, our committee gets for free, because if this goes to town meeting, it will be a financial warrant article that we will be asked to discuss and vote on. So that will happen sooner or later. For other committees, it's more of a, is this something that you think would be, the town forest committee, which is in fact coming to town meeting asking for money, you will be unsurprised to learn that they are, very interested in the possibility of adopting the CPA, that sort of thing. So I think Historic Preservation has voted on it, and some others, but yeah. So yeah, as it says here, I mean, the decisions this committee has to make, the biggest decision that the CPA study committee has to make is the sort of recommendation on surcharge rates. I guess the recommendation on exemptions is also important, but that one I feel like is maybe less controversial. The surcharge rate one is probably the, most, it's a question with the probably be most contentious. So if people have thoughts on that, if you want to share them now or you want to share them later, please do. You can contact us at reading.gov/CPA. Jack's made a cool website for us. Thank you, Jackie. Joe, go ahead.
Like your point about the surcharge rate, like my understanding is like by not doing the 3%, we give up the ability to participate in round 2 and round 3 of additional reimbursement. Is that true?
The communities that get to do round 2 and 3, if I'm not mistaken, are small, rural, and poor communities. And when we looked at the criteria, we found that we were a far cry from qualifying for those rounds. And they also have to elect up to 3%, as I think your question assumes. So most of the funds, I forget what the percentage of, but the overwhelming majority are round 1.
80% is given away in round 1, and then 20% of those registry fees are saved in rounds 2 and 3. But as Sandy said, they are sort of the formula for allocating them is based on the size and financial status of the community. So.
And just like a comment on the presentation, like first, thanks for doing all this. Good job. I think some cynics might look at it, and a lot of your use cases, people would say, well, the town was able to do most of those anyways, and this would only help with the timing. So it might help to and I Joe, I saw your point probably about, oh, well, we spent this money anyways, right? And this could have been a source, and but I also think it might be helpful to have some of the other, like Birch Meadow 3 and 4, or other, more updated playgrounds, or more pedestrian paths, or bike trails, or some things like the wish list things that we're not getting to. I mean, that might give more support for it. Just a thought. So.
Well, you've answered for yourself anyway the last question we had, which is what other ideas do you have for how the money might best be spent? We're just trying to get a feel for what those ideas may be. They may sell a lot better politically than the ones that we have.
Yeah, and like you said, we do this anyway. The town spends roughly the $1 million anyway, but with the with the match from the state now, your dollar's going further type thing. It's like people love to talk about the state matches when you're building a high school or a new school and you get the match. Kind of a little bit of a same thinking, that if you get into the CPA, then you're eligible for additional funding. So.
And then last question on the governance, like in terms of how you vote on how that money is spent, who ultimately owns that? Is that the select board based on recommendations from?
No, there's the second to last slide, I think it was, said if the town votes to adopt the law, at the next town meeting, a committee is formed. It's called the Community Preservation Committee. And there's a required makeup of the law provides a required makeup for that committee. That committee serves as a sort of a clearinghouse for projects that are being proposed with a certain amount of funding from the CPA fund that then is served up to town meeting, who makes the final decision as to whether or not the project gets funded.
Okay, so every year ongoing, there'd be a process to go before town meeting. Okay.
Right. Town meeting's got to approve it, but the committee will vet the projects and help people coming with projects to if it needs to be tweaked to get it in shape, but they will be doing the vetting, and then the recommendation goes to the select board, and then town meeting has to vote on allocation of those funds.
Great.
Every year.
Yep. Thank you.
Marianne?
I have a logistical voting question. So I see that you're expecting a vote in a year. Are there requirements for that it has to be part of a like being the only thing on the ballot? You know how there's certain requirements for the override? I didn't know if CPA had requirements, like, could it, a lot of community members who, especially after our later discussions in this meeting, who are gonna be aware that we may be contemplating an override for like fiscal year '28, might wanna know that amount before they commit to different things. That's part one of my question, and then part two was, can you only present a single CPA amount on a ballot, or can you have a tier? And I'm inspired by seeing that Melrose, which passed an override yesterday, I don't personally like the framing of their question, but they had a tiered override where people could vote for any different amounts. And actually it was, you know, whichever, if they all pass, the largest one wins. And I don't know, you know, it could have been this, it could have been, they could have framed it as well, whichever one gets the most votes. But do people, when they have CPA votes, allow the communities to choose between, yes, we'd want 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, or just, this is it?
I'm pretty sure this is it, which is why we're struggling to find the right number, given all the considerations that we think should bear on that. I know that the statute actually has a form of article that's required to go be on the ballot. And I took a look at that once and I didn't see anything. And CP, the people that we've consulted have not indicated that there's a like a set of options that you can put out to the voters. And I haven't heard of any city or town that's done that.
Okay.
And Joe is shaking his head.
Can it be on the same ballot as a town election? Like, would it, just in terms of saving money on elections? And I know with an override, you could have it at the same time as something else, but I believe it has to be its own ballot. And I don't know if CPA could be a ballot question that goes along with, you know, our spring municipal elections, or whether we would be holding our own election in November just for CPA, or would it coincide with governor election or something?
That's a state election.
State elections, November of '26.
Yeah. To answer your question, so it's interesting. It's actually in some ways the opposite of the requirement with an override, and I don't know how we ended up with in the Commonwealth having these two different questions restricted differently. But for the Community Preservation Act, it is required to be at a regularly scheduled state or local election. So we would be allowed to have it in April at our local election. We would be allowed to have it in November at the state election. We would not be allowed to call a special election for it at another time.
Okay.
And you're not allowed to use the primary either, interestingly enough. So like the September primary is no good. I think they want to make sure that you don't have it at a like time when nobody shows up except for one side, basically.
I mean, the interesting part of, I think, your question is, you know, how this relates to a potential override and whether or not this is being timed in a way that it would coincide with either an override article or at least the specter of one sometime soon, and whether or not this is part of the problem and or might be part of the solution.
Yeah, I think Winchester delayed their CPA passing because they had, it was a debt exclusion that they wanted to pass for an elementary school, but that was a vote, and I know they delayed because they didn't want it to impact that debt exclusion. So I don't know if we're going to have issues with override timing, and that is probably all to be determined, but thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to state sort of two obvious things, on the one hand, CPA ballot questions are much more likely to pass when there is not another tax-related question before the voters at the same or similar time. Also, there's always a tax-related question before the voters sooner or later. You know, we went a fairly long time between, you know, the I guess the override and Killam. That was like, you know, 7 years, and I don't know when's the last time running went 7 years without considering, you know, tax hike at the ballot box. So hard to find a big window.
Can I ask a question on the governance?
Go for it.
So at the beginning of the presentation, this acts as an advisory board. So my question is, let's say this moves forward, gets funded, and then now 5 years from now, we have a project, the funding is released and the work on the project begins, and the project doesn't go as planned. So who is accountable of that? Because the board sounds to me just an advisory board, but there is no accountability. I'm just trying to figure out basically who's accountable for spending and making sure that the money that's being spent from the CPA is actually going where it should be, basically.
I'm actually looking at Sharon in case she knows, although obviously she wouldn't know that from experience in Reading. My understanding, though, is because it is approved by town meeting, is then at that point it's handled in the manner of other town meeting allocated funds. Obviously, it's separated from it, but then again, so are a lot of things from it's not part of the general fund, but so are.
Yeah, I thought of that too, but because they're an advisory committee, they are in charge of sending stuff to town meeting. So if they don't send the project that went wrong to town meeting cannot vote on it. So it's kind of interesting. I was just thinking of that, that's all.
So I don't actually know, I know the procedure for putting something on the warrant to town meeting. The bar is very low. I think it's 10 signatures. So I don't know off the top of my head whether or not you could put something to town meeting that the Community Preservation Committee had rejected. Obviously, whatever town meeting approved would need to, the math would need to work. You can't approve, more money than it has to spend. But I don't actually know how that would play out. I wouldn't recommend it personally. The committee exists for a purpose. It brings together representatives from planning and recreation and conservation and so forth, who are experts in the respective areas where the CPA can be spent.
No, thanks for you.
Sorry.
I was thinking of the affordable housing, for example.
Yes.
If there is a project, let's say an innovation project, let's say right now the senior center, there is if we have money through CPA, after 10 years, we're gonna redevelop that into affordable housing. You can spend that money for that purpose. However, it has to go through town meeting first to get approved, right? Let's say that the CPA board doesn't want to do that. So where is the accountability? Who's accountable for this? This is just an advisory committee. So every time I see or I hear that term, I think about who's responsible if something goes wrong. That's all. But just my opinion.
So as I understand it, the Community Preservation Committee has to file at least an annual report to the select board showing its activity, what's been distributed, I would assume projects that have come in for consideration, that sort of thing. So there's that. And then like Joe said, the committee's going to be made up of, experts, if you will, in all these pillars that we've discussed. So I think there will be oversight onto this committee. And it's really just a funding source. And once it gets to town meeting, once it's approved by town meeting, then it's like any other project in town that gets funded and whoever oversees it.
Go ahead, Sharon, if you had anything to add.
It would seem to me that there would be a separate fund where the funds would go, and I would probably oversee what it's used for. So if there's a vote at town meeting, I would be making sure.
Right, and like I said, at least an annual report, if not a semi-annual report presented, so.
Although I've never dealt with CPA,
Right, exactly.
So I don't know for sure exactly how it's set up, but I would say that sounds like the way it is, especially if money can roll from year to year. It's not annual money that
Kind
goes
of a
away.
revolving fund type.
So a revolving fund sounds like what it would be.
Correct.
Yes, no, this is great. That's why I brought that up. And the mandate to have representative from several boards, that could go both ways, because the folks that are on the Parks and Recreation would advocate for Parks and Recreation. The historical folks would advocate for that. So that could cause some friction there too, but yeah. So it can go both ways.
I mean, we are, you know, the 9 of us here on FinCom are on a committee that provides advice to town meeting on how money should be spent. And there are many stakeholders who would like to see money spent various ways. So you know, if we're all right, I'm hoping that the Community Preservation Committee would be all right too.
Little leap of faith, yeah.
Are there any other questions for, yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So there's the 10% minimum for each of the 3 categories. So I understand that the idea that, you know, we have this $1 million, we'd have spent $1 million on those 3 buckets at some point, and, you know, by doing the CPA, we get the state to kick in some amount for doing something we would have done anyway. So, like, in some sense, that it seems a no-brainer, right? That, like, wow, we can, if we just do this, then we can kick some state funds in to pay what we would have paid for anyway. The only question I have, though, is that we have a minimum required of 10% of each of those. So I think clearly we've spent well over $1 million on all of the recreation and conservation things. I'm not sure what we've spent for affordable housing in the past 10 years. And we're now required to allocate 10% of whatever we bring into this thing that maybe we haven't been doing. And maybe we should be, because there's lots of state grants that we could kick in, but it's like it hasn't been a priority for the town to do that. And I'm not sure on the historic preservation how much we've done.
For historic preservation, the key to that is all the historic buildings that the town owns and the projects on them. So like even the Parker roof would have qualified because Parker is a registered historic building. Joshua Eaton is Town Hall, the library, Pleasant Street Center. I can't remember, maybe one of the fire stations, I'm not sure. But in any case, you know, that's, we've spent, so the, you know, you are right. I think of the 10 million that I found in roughly 10 million. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm guessing as to whether these projects are CPA eligible or not. But my educated guess was 10 million, and I can show you my spreadsheet, by the way.
I'll take your word for that.
Yes, second prize. You see 2 spreadsheets. But yeah, your intuition is right. Rec was the largest. Historical was second. And I think conservation would have been actually third, because I think the only real significant expense there was the one lot that we bought on Grove Street.
The conservation fits in with recreation.
Yes, that's right. They would be in the same 10% pool.
What about
affordable housing? Would it be? Yes. No, that is.
Did we spend anything on on affordable housing in that 10 million?
No. And so that is, you can see that as a bug or a feature, but it would require eventually, and I mean, I understand there are communities that do this, like, I can't remember which community I was here, but there was someone who had not spent any of their CPA money on affordable housing in 20 years and had just been banking that 10% every year, and then they finally did a project. So that's, you know, Reading could do that if that is the will of the committee and town meeting. Joe.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, we already have like an affordable housing trust that I don't think that money's been spent down, but.
No, I mean, that's actually the affordable housing, and we did, I wasn't there, but a couple of people in the committee went to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund trustees meeting. And, you know, obviously, I mean, that is a strange fund because it is a fund with no funding. And obviously, if Reading did adopt the CPA, one thing Reading could do with its 10% is just put its 10% in there every year, and then that fund would actually have meaning, value, purpose, and utility, as opposed to just being a committee that meets every once in a while and looks at the same small amount of money and doesn't do anything with it.
Right, because I thought there was some money in it. Maybe it's not.
It is, but you can't. I mean, I think it's on the order of hundreds of thousands. $400,000. Yeah, that'll right. That will not get you a shack at Reading. So, although I do wonder why they're not looking into more of these. You know, the things that we learned about in our investigation on the CPA committee about state affordable housing plans, where there's often a very significant amount of money available, and you need to put in a small local share as your contribution. I do wonder if the Affordable Housing Trust folks have looked at that, but I don't know. Any other questions?
Yeah, the Housing Authority and the Affordable Housing Trust are very interested in this.
Needless to say, yes, right. That is one place where eventually there would actually be a difference necessarily from what we've done in the past.
And there's a dire need for that too.
Just as a thought, rather than spending the affordable housing money on, you can't buy a house, you can't buy a shack, but I've heard complaints in town meeting from people who live in subsidized or affordable housing about conditions. Could money be spent to not like go target some restaurant and say, yep, we're gonna put new appliances in, but to improve the properties or provides, like, do some maintenance that might be needed on existing properties that are marked affordable, or does it have to be acquiring new housing?
Maintenance is not allowed.
Okay.
However, upgrade, which extends the useful life or enhances the value, would be. But for affordable housing, it doesn't necessarily have to be a capital project. It can also be a rent subsidy, for example, or a contribution, if you will, to acquisition of affordable housing as well. So you don't have to necessarily think of it as a real estate development project like Tannerville. It could take any number of other forms for housing. Housing is sort of wide open in that regard. There's a lot of operating type funds that are allowed in that area, but not maintenance.
Yeah, no, it's interesting actually. The for open space and housing, rehabilitation projects are permissible only if the resource was originally acquired or created with CPA money, which is interesting. Like, so you wouldn't be allowed to go put in an elevator at Tannerville, but if we then, redevelop, took an existing, property that's owned by the Reading Housing Authority and redeveloped it to have more units, which is possible, then subsequent rehabilitation of that property without, completely creating it from scratch would be permissible. I don't know why it's like that. Any other questions? Thank you both for the presentation. Thank you to the whole committee for a lot of good questions.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
All right, let us continue with our agenda. The next on the agenda is discussion on the process for considering a future override. I was hoping that Matt would magically have all the answers and know everything about what we might need to do in the future for an override. He mentioned that he does have to get ready for town meeting next week, so this is going to be informal, not a detailed presentation. But I wonder if people have questions that other people might know answers to, or if people want to share what they know about the process. And Matt, if there's anything you want to say to start us off, please do.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. I think I'll talk a little more, but I thought we were talking about maybe having a joint meeting with the select board to sort of kick things off to make sure everybody's on the same page, because we want to make sure we have buy-in. We need to know the process, but also, are we ready? There'll be a lot of input from Sharon. So I think that might be a good way to start off. At that meeting or even before that, we can go back and see what we did last time, see what we may want to do differently this time, and outline a process. The timing is still up in the air, as Sharon will say. We're not sure. We know that one is coming down the road. We're not sure exactly when that's going to be. So a lot of the timing would have to fit into that space. So, but I'm also interested to hear what the Finance Committee has to say, obviously, about your feelings. I know we got a lot of input at the last discussion regarding free cash, so I took that back to my department heads. Tomorrow we're having a department heads meeting, and I'm going to talk more about the budget there as well. So we're sort of gearing up and trying to be as frugal as possible as we do the lead up. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of it's going to be on this day and it's going to be this amount, that's still yet to be determined. So.
I have a question, but I want to give other people a chance to ask questions first. Jeffrey just leaned in. Go ahead.
I was treasurer for both Yes for Reading override to town, so I kind of pulled that down unloaded the information that's like, these things start to come back up. And, certainly it's the select board that ultimately puts the warrant articles out for the election. But there was certainly also, a large amount of community education that went into doing this and deciding, are we going to do an override? How much are we going to do? And, one of the questions I specifically remember the former town manager, Bob Lasher, asking was, if you don't want the town to spend money, if you don't want this override, name a service you use that you would be happy to do without. Right? He didn't want people saying, "Oh, I have kids. I'm not a senior. I don't want the senior center. Oh, I don't have kids. I don't want education." He said, "Name a service that you're using that you would like to do without." So in terms of, where are the things that we should cut back on? But that's kind of bits and pieces from my recollection from a few years ago. Also, that it failed the first time it failed, and it was sort of like, I think Bob Lasher, I think, was commenting on this, was something that the town didn't really, we hadn't done one in such a long time. And so many of the voters in town, like in an apartment building or something, had no idea, it just wasn't something that was on anybody's mind. Like, oh, do we need to do this? So, kind of educating people about the whole, what is Prop 2.5? Why is it always a problem? Is something that almost we had to do that first override. It failed just to get that level of education out to the community.
Ed, I see your hand.
Thanks, Joe. And actually, I'll echo a lot of what Jeffrey was just saying. I think, what you mentioned in the outset, Matt, I think is going to be very helpful, because I think that was, going to Jeffrey's last point, I think that was probably the parts of it that were missing when we went through the first override, as far as having, kind of clear messaging, clear, kind of details from everyone within town staff, department heads, et cetera, what that meant for schools, what that meant for fire and police and services that are out there. I think those are all important things. And it's all things that we've talked about, kind of in the last couple, kind of budget reviews is, okay, well, where are we staffing wise, and, and what's the, the last things that were cut, from a budget that you're proposing. We would just probably look at this in the inverse. What are the first things that you would have to do without? I think those are the types of things that would, need to be in that, in the planning stages. And I think that's, I think you're, kind of right on the right track, from that perspective. My question was, you mentioned, kind of when were you thinking about the timing of that meeting? Is that something that obviously knowing full well that town meeting's in 5 days, and so that's obviously kind of front and center, but just curious.
Yeah, we do have town meeting coming up, and then we're right into Thanksgiving, and then we're right into, talking about this year's budget with the select board for the first part of December. So they'll get a little flavor for it during those budget meetings. So I would think probably early next year in January, when things free up a little bit, we can start having those meetings in earnest and start planning forward. I just want to get through this budget cycle a little bit more, get through town meeting, and then get to a place where we can start talking. And during that time, I'll be looking at this year's budget, and I'll be bringing that to you in March, as I always do, with the department heads. So you'll have a good sense of where this year's budget, it's really 27 next year's budget is going to be, but we're working on it now. So I leave the timing to the select board and the finance committee, but I would say sooner rather than later is good to get everybody on the same page with these things.
And Matt, you're just so I had it right, those were joint meetings between the select board and FinCom, correct? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I think at least a joint meeting between the select board and FinCom, and I'll talk more with the select board about that. Just to, and right, and school committee, like the three big boards that have budget control. You're right, school committee as well, we talked about. or at least members of those, doesn't have to be the whole committee, but at least the chairs, to talk about, what they think we need, timing, what's going to happen. And I know that I've gotten a lot of feedback from the select board, and the select board is saying, and rightly so, start looking now at ways to save, not only cut, but generate more funds, and that's what we've been bringing to the select board just about every meeting. And, like Sharon said, every little bit helps. We'd still have to bring a lot more to say we don't need an override ever, and that's just not a reality under, Prop 2.5. But if we can sort of stay it off a little bit, I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, and maybe some town meeting members as well, so.
I mean, I think that's, you kind of hit on one other piece that I was thinking too, and that might be, a good place to start is to have a, kind of a steering, I don't even know the right, description of it, but a steering committee or just that's made up of the chairs and the vice chairs and, yourself, Sharon, and Jane, to be able to kind of start to, and I don't know if those things have started, now that all the reorgs are in place, but I think that might be a good place to start. This is, obviously, kind of a full, community, issue, and kind of getting all those chairs and vice chairs together, to be able to have that type of discussion and kick those off and have those going along at the same time at a cadence. It doesn't have to be kind of weekly, obviously, but stuff in that regard. That might be another place to be able to do this. I know we did a few of those. When I was chair, just to be able to kind of start to think about some of the other community priorities. So that could be helpful as well.
Yep, I agree.
So I was going to say something similar to what Ed said, and I was just researching as he was speaking. Multiple communities around us have formed so-called override study committees, because if you start taking FinCom school committee, select board, that's 20 people in the room already. That's a lot of voices. And, I think Brookline, Norwell, they also can maintain a page of information, so it's not necessarily to take the place of yes for writing, but it's an objective play, where community would have questions, like, Stoneham's, we'll see how successful they are, because their overrides in December, they already had a failed one. But when I look at their makeup, like they have a select board designee, a school committee designee, 3 or 4 residents. I don't know if they have a finance committee there. The chair is
Finance and advisory.
Finance and advisory board designee. So they're picking people, but they're also including residents. And I don't know. I guess you're not going to pick town staff or somebody that would be impacted by the benefiting from the override, right? But
well, myself and Sharon would be, and probably Jane would be involved pretty heavily.
Right, like that's, that kind of, you guys are different than I'm saying, like, a member of police and fire union,
probably not at that level at this point. No.
But it seems like there could be an initial meeting, and I don't think we've ever had an override study committee.
Last time, I don't think. We
no.
Just sort of moved what we had, but it's not a bad idea. That's goes to my goal of getting everybody on the same page.
Right. It's just that it's so many people and so many voices and a lot of time from a lot of people. It's just, we've had success with, we have our Killam committee, we had the ARPA committee, and things, got done and got done on time. So that would be a goal.
Yep. No, that's good feedback. I appreciate it.
So I've been thinking about how bad the timing is of the need of the override, where we've done the debt exclusions, and the debt exclusions are going to start hitting people's tax bills in fiscal 27, and then we were expecting to have the second tranche hitting in 28. It seems like 28 might be the year. So I was thinking about structuring, we're going to be meeting with the bonding agent to see how we can structure what we borrow, to maybe see if there's a way that nothing's hitting in 28, or if we structured, if say 28 was the year for the override, let's say we asked for 6 and I said, okay, I'm only going to hit you for 3. this year and then 3 the next year, like kind of spread it out. Like they would have to approve the 6 million and trust that I would leave the 3 million on the table, that I would not, like that we could maybe have different ways to structure it to lessen the pain and still make the budgets work a little bit easier. So I'm thinking of all different things. We haven't met with the bonding agent we're waiting on updated cash flows on Recal, and we have the one for Calum, just to see what's the best way to structure this debt so that we can kind of make it so that no one year is just a dramatic hit on any household. It's just not great timing. It hasn't been from the beginning. As soon as inflation hit, I'm like, oh, we have this project coming. This is not great timing. So we are thinking about options, and obviously I'd be welcoming any advice from others of things that we could do to try and make it less painful, right? Because this is a lot to ask of the residents all at once. It's just a lot.
I'm intrigued by this idea of having doing one override vote to raise the levy limit, but then not actually exercising the entire levy limit.
You could say I could take two, spread it over 3 years.
Right,
So that, the first year you approve the 6 years, but I'm only going to take 2 of it. And next year I will take 4, I'll be at 4. And just slowly bringing it in so that our budget starts to see the numbers going down a little bit of free cash, as opposed, it is allowed.
You are not
don't see it a lot,
required to use up your levy limit.
because it requires a lot of trust of the resident to know that I will do that I won't just take the vote and say,
12 million.
it takes a lot of, rather than taking whatever that number is, whatever we decide that number is, if we spread it over several years, that could be helpful. Like if people could trust me to do that, because once they say yes to it, I could technically not do it, but I would never do that.
You would have to get it past us and town meeting.
Exactly. But it's a way to structure it to lessen the pain each year and make it a little bit more palatable, I guess I'll call it. So it's just been things I've been thinking about, and it's something that I think the former town manager, Bob Lashur, had mentioned to me years ago, actually a couple of years ago, as a potential thought, because as we started to realize inflation was impacting us and we had those 2 projects coming up, he had mentioned it to me. And it just came back to me like, oh, what did he tell me I could do if this would happen? I mean, it's just very difficult to think outside the box and figure out how to make this as minimally impactful as possible. But we have so much big going on that it's hard. So I welcome any thoughts, but those are some of the things I'm thinking about, is speaking to the bonding agent, trying to see if there's a way we could structure the second tranche so there isn't anything additional hitting in 28, so that's just the override or some combination of which, where we try and ask for a number that we, tier in, where we say, okay, we ask for 6 million and I'll take 3 and 3, or 3, 2 and 1, or however we do it. I feel like that might be making it a little less painful, maybe.
But it's just hard. I very much respect and trust that you will do what you do, but just like any lawyer would look at a contract, you can't depend on a person. Like it would be nice to have that memorialized in writing, because you could take a new job. There could be a different town manager. It could be different government. There could be some new unexpected thing where you say, you know what? I said I was going to do 2 and 2, but we have to do 8 all at once now.
Exactly.
And so it's hard to.
It's hard, and I don't know what I'm allowed to put up. Like, I don't know how the vote is allowed to be structured. Like you had said, we could tier a vote and say, well, we could have, you can vote me a 3 or 4 or 5, and whatever the one that gets the highest one that gets the highest votes will be able to be the amount. But they don't really talk about, in what I've read, about kind of tiering it in. It is allowed. You can ask for an override and say, okay, well, I'm not going to take all of it all at once. It's got to be kind of that trust of the town manager and the CFO and that they're going to do as they put out there. And it's hard because I could not be here when it's being executed and that person isn't going to execute. But it would be something I would say, that I would definitely do. But like you said, you never know what the future holds. What if that same person's not sitting there and that isn't the one who gave their word that it would go that way? I guess that's one of those things we'd have to ask town council. Is there a way you put that out there on the vote so it makes it clear, so that I do exactly as I say, or whoever comes next has to do as we agreed. So I definitely agree with you. That's the one piece there's a trust thing that has to be there, and I don't know how you do it, but it definitely seems like it would be a lessening of the burden.
Ed?
Thanks, Joe. I mean, Sharon, I mean, you never cease to amaze me to bring an idea that, I didn't think was, that was out there or available. So again, hats off to you again. I think, this is probably definitely, in that realm of things that we should, kind of have at our disposal as far as talking points. One idea that came up while you were thinking about it is that, if you have the ability to do that, and, whether it's, kind of stated specifically in how it's voted on, but some of this actually sounds like just a business practice as well. Like you can, when you, kind of document the revenue sources that you're, you're creating those pictures, and those line items, that could be one of those things you're saying, like, well, hey, the override represented, this number, but, for the purposes of the FY28, budget, we're only using, kind of this portion, things of that nature. I think there's ways to be able to present that. And I also, and something to explore, because I think that's, not only is it you mentioned the word a few times, that there's trust on you, but I think that's one of the ways that we can actually instill trust into the residents and the voters, is that, you're looking at this, from every prism, and trying to minimize the impact on the taxpayer. And I think it's just, again, I'm looking forward to our next meeting, because you'll probably have something, another brilliant idea as well. No pressure.
No pressure.
Were you about to ask a question? Somebody? I had a question about scheduling an actual vote and how that works. I understand that the select board is the one that decides when this happens, when a vote would occur. Does the select board, if it's a town meeting, who then has to approve it, or is it actually the select board? Does it go through town meeting? I guess that's the first question.
The select board has to set, they have the authority to set the election, and so that's what they would do. That's what they did last time. In terms of town meeting, I'm trying to remember if we went to town meeting the last time. I don't seem to recall that we did, but I can double check.
I feel like it's a good place to give information. I don't know if they have to vote.
Right. I mean, we would certainly make town meeting well aware, maybe some sort of just special report or presentation. I don't think they have the exact authority to do anything on here.
It says here, you see it?
I just was Googling and it said, sorry, I'm Googling and I've got to see what, Google's AI says. It calls it a phased-in override.
Oh,
So it says communities like Brookline have successfully used overrides that phase in the total increase over a number of years, such as 3 years, with a specific dollar amount kicking in during each fiscal year. So unless Google is lying to me.
No, I definitely think it's possible. I just,
Yeah, so
I don't know about the language.
Right there, it's on your screen.
I'm gonna see.
I do have a,
BrainTreeMA.gov looks like.
I do have some information about what you just asked. It basically says in the guide that DLS gives us that the only way an override or an exclusion question may be placed on the ballot, they may not, the select board is the only one that can put it on the ballot. They may not be placed on the ballot by town meeting vote or any local initiative procedure, so it has to go through the select board. But I do have kind of a list of things, your responsibility as FinCom members when an override's going on, and it's a lot about, you are like that financial watchdog. You're the one who's supposed to kind of prompt the select board that that it's time, right? I mean, so that's, I think, why we would have that meeting with school committee, FinCom, select board, so that all the key players are on the same page. But it really is, I think the select board's really looking for FinCom to recommend the override. But there's a lot of things that happen in terms of, education. There's a lot of limitations on town staff of what they can do because we cannot promote an override with town funds. We have to be very careful of what we do. I think that's why you have yes for Reading kind of committees and things like that, because there has to be an educational group out there trying to spread the word that is not kind of using town funds to spread the word. We can give information, but we can't kind of promote it, I guess is what I'd say. So I have this and I'll send it, by email. It's just DLS's guidelines of what is FinCom's role in an override. I mean, it's a little premature. We're not there yet because we have to have those meetings, but at least I did some research to find.
I don't think it's premature to spread information. I mean, unfortunately, my most and least favorite thing about being on finance committee is that the numbers are what they are. So you just can't wish $7 million into existence nor out of existence.
I wish you could.
Right.
It'd be real nice.
So on the subject of elections, this is actually maybe a good complement to Marianne's question about CPA election timing. She might even know the answer to mine. I knew the answer to hers. Can an override election be scheduled to occur at the same time as a state election in November?
Yeah, I have that here.
Okay.
Yes, you have it right.
Right, yeah. I mean, I do know that, I understand that both overrides and CPA are follow a pattern where higher turnout.
So like that
tends to correlate
November
with
date that
success.
was mentioned could be a date that we utilize.
Right, that is
So when they said it, I'm like,
that
oh.
raises an interesting, well, I mean, it's, so this is something that I think I may have shared this from when, I don't know if I shared it with this committee. When the CPA study committee presented to the school committee, a member of the school committee, so their first and foremost concern was an override, understandable, because the schools, live and die by an override. They were not interested in anything they thought would jeopardize an override. However, there was a suggestion of trying to, now, I understand it would be two different ballot questions, it would be two different ballot question committees, but at least informally, it could be structured as a package deal, as in, well, we could have raised your taxes 5%, but actually we're going to raise them 4% plus 1%, where the 1% gets a state match.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
But
is
you
interesting.
could
And then
package it
that would
up.
that might then, maybe that would affect, okay, we should change the capital, target to 4.5% instead of 5 or something.
Because maybe some of the capital we planned on could be done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, there are some possibilities there to talk about. So I am interested to see how that goes.
It does say here that a Prop 2.5 question may be placed on a regular or special municipal election ballot, and questions may also be placed on the state biannual election ballot.
Oh, wow. So it actually could be on the same ballot.
Yeah, it was last time.
Okay, yeah. I knew it was on the same, I knew it was on the local ballot. I didn't know if it could be on a state ballot. That's
I think it's nice to schedule it with an election that's already happening, just so you don't have that added
I
cost.
mean, I have heard commentary from the town clerk about the challenges in running multiple simultaneous ballots on the same day in the era of mail-in voting.
Can confirm.
Yes.
I get
So
it. I get it.
and I'm not,
I mean, the plus of having the November would be that we wouldn't have to build two budgets. We would know if it passed or failed.
right,
before we
that's
started to
another thing
put
about it. I
together.
mean, the last two times, correct me if anyone knows that I'm wrong, please correct me. But my recollection is that we had a special election in September for the first one, which presumably that's the beginning of the budget process. Now that I had no idea why it was in September then, but now I'm like, oh, of course, September, that's when you need to know. And it, of course, got creamed. And then later, when it passed, it was at an April local election where I was not yet on town meeting or anything at the time, but I understand that the town had to prepare two budgets effectively, which
is
that's a lot of work for you all, yes. So
I mean, and it's not that you can't see, just looking at the financial forecast, that there's a structural issue there.
Right.
We've known it. It's not like it has to be proven. It's been seen year after year that it's growing. Inflation is hurting our budget more and more every year. So.
Right. Yep. That answered my questions about scheduling. Joe?
This may come out of the discussions, and it may be either, I don't know, I call it the education category, and also maybe wishful thinking. But I'd love to see, like, any pull all the levers. Like, how can we potentially go one more year? Do you know what I mean? And look really hard across the board, and not just like hiring freezes or cuts, but extend out our pension funding schedule. On capital, go to zero. Like push hard on everything and say okay.
We don't have the choice when it comes to our pension schedule. The retirement board sets our payment schedule, so we don't have that choice. My only thought is that we've been doing pretty much everything we can, and when you see those free cash things that I give you in terms of when or our reserves drop, all of them seem to point to 28 as the year. Unfortunately, sometimes it just dictates. I mean, we don't want to see our bond rating go down when we're borrowing for the projects.
Yeah, John, don't get me wrong, I'm not questioning, like, I see the numbers too. I'm more, some of it, again, is like education, right? And you're just saying what, I guess on the retirement board, though, like how is that governed, though? Like, I'm still kind of...
I'm actually on the retirement board, so I'm the chair. So I actually advocated to have it go down, because the last 2 years, every 2 years, we have an actuary valuation of our liability and what's owed. We're just about almost 80% funded for pension. I expressed to the board that the 8.33 that we had the last 2 years was really too much, especially with inflation hitting all at the same time, and asked for them to reduce that percentage. And we went down to like 5.3%, which I think is a much better number. But any more than that would have pushed out our funding schedule further, and I don't know if I could have gotten support of the whole board. So I did advocate for that, to get some savings for us for our budget, but that is actually under their authority to decide. You know, and obviously me being on that board is that voice for the town saying we can't afford that, you know. But we're very close to being fully funded, and they want to see us get there. So going down 3.3% or whatever it was that they went down on what we had been paying, I think was a step in the right direction. So we're locked in now for the next 2 years for that assessment. Those have been reported to PERIC based on that vote of the retirement board. The next time that they would change it would be 2 years from now. So I don't have an opportunity to ask them to bring it down any further anyway.
Yeah, but being 80% funded relative to other towns, like, we're still in a very high bar there. You know, so I'm just.
I know, but the vote has already happened, so I can't change it now.
Maybe for the next time.
For the next time I could, but I don't see anything I could do that would push off another year. I don't know, maybe we'll get lucky and something will come up, but just not seeing things stabilize cost-wise is not helpful either, because our projections going out aren't even stabilizing. Until I can see that happening, it's just hard to say.
Sharon, isn't there a date that it has to be fully funded? I thought in like
2040.
Oh, it's that.
And we're like, by doing what we did, we pushed it out like 2 years. I think it's 2032. We used to be 2029. We went to 2032.
But we're still way above, like, most.
We are way above it. You get one bad year of investment returns and you're going the other way. So it's
also
hard.
Had a good asset run for a long time now.
Yeah, and we also have started to pull out of PRIT and do sleeves to help balance. You know, as we're getting closer to being fully funded, we're trying to manage our own asset allocation to de-risk the portfolio as we're getting closer to fully funded, because PRIT is really focused on kind of their bigger, like math teachers and the math, you know, so they're less funded than us. So as we get closer to fully funding, we want to pull our assets out a little bit of the more risky things, or be able to decide what percentages are in each asset class. And so we have already started to do that to give ourselves that kind of control. But it's not just me that decides, it's the whole board. It's a 5-member board, and I worked them down to 5, and that was the best I could do.
And I guess the other thing is, like, on the capital side, right? We've been doing like 5%, 4.5% for, I mean, back to every little thing helps. Like, we could
do that.
But we also have to say, like, what's the trade-off, right? We tell poor Matt, okay, there's a hiring freeze, and Matt should come back and, okay, here's the services, right? You know, I'm going to cut, right?
Yeah, we certainly could. I mean,
but I think for the education, I think really got to get that out there to people, right?
The kind of cuts we would need, though, would be things that would impact services. I would rather ask the voters before I impact services. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you're actually not hiring staff and you're affecting the level of service, I know part of me feels like I'd want to have a no vote to do that. You know, like, I want to know that that's what the town wanted. At least in my opinion, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. But keep in mind, a lot of people from the private side used to just having 5-10%, layoffs. There's
Yeah,
now there's corporate
I understand
layoffs,
that.
and I think taxpayers are gonna
Oh,
say.
I get that, yeah.
No, I'm. It's not me personally. I'm just saying that's the cynical side of people. They're gonna say like, "What? Yeah, why can't they just cut?" Like, I think that's part of what's happened in
Like
Stone.
my boss did, yeah.
Right.
I think about how much people pay here in Reading and they want the top level service. You don't want them, have them paying that kind of money for real estate taxes and not getting top level service. And when you're forced to cut staff back, there's just very little way that you're not going to affect services.
Oh yeah. Again, I'm not recommending it.
And something that's been done in the past, I remember Bob went on before the last override, it's something I've been considering. There's been positions that I've sort of put holds on, not an official hiring freeze, but saying, could we, if you have a couple of these people, could we really do without this one for now until we see? So unofficially, I've been watching every position, but there's no official hiring freeze yet, but it's one of the tools that we could use to sort of stave things off a little bit and to show that this is serious, and it would affect services, but, that's the reality, so.
Mark, looks like you want to ask a question?
So we did talk a little bit of this on the capital plan, using debt as far as instead of short-term cash. So I think that is something we should look at.
You can do that, yeah.
Because I remember you said, John, that you had done it in the budget that got approved, but maybe for a 27 budget, we should look at that.
Seeing if taking and borrowing for all the capital, you mean, in terms of?
Not 100%, but maybe 75, 80% of it, because then we're not using our short-term cash on a long-term asset.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I feel like the numbers have grown so much of free cash use that it's hard to find that kind of money, even, unless I borrowed all of the capital.
But we're looking at it being, 6 to 7 million probably a year, right?
For between
cap.
debt and capital?
Well, just for cap,
So-
if it's 5% of the budget, it's.
So right now, I think for fiscal 26, it's about $4 million of capital because I brought down.
We brought it.
Because I put off some debt. So in the end, we end up at like 4 million. It's usually somewhere in that 3.9 million dollars of it is capital and the rest of it's debt payments. So the more you borrow, the more debt payments you end up having too. So it's like you want to make sure that it's worthwhile to do it. Smaller things I can't see borrowing.
I agree
for.
with that, but I do look at long-term assets should be funded with long-term funding, not using your short.
For sure, we could do that. I just feel like we've gotten to a big enough number that I don't know how much of that would make a difference. It's certainly something
It's
we'll
worth
look
looking
at.
at, yeah.
It's worth looking at.
It's worth telling people showing that we
we've looked
did
at
do that.
I mean, in future years in the capital plan, I do go after larger assets like a fire truck that has grown to like $1.5 million, and I'm looking at that as borrowing. But I wasn't looking at the smaller things like, maybe we could be looking at trucks from DPW that are like 300,000, 275, and maybe borrowing for those.
Yeah.
The problem is issuing debt is so expensive, so you want to make sure you have enough to issue because it becomes very expensive. The issuance cost plus the interest and all of that. So we've always kind of been under the practice of not borrowing for the small stuff, but it's certainly something I could look at.
Are there any other questions or comments on this topic? All right, another good discussion. I do really like these meetings. All right, let's keep going. So now we have another town meeting. It's hiding inside of the first one. And it has financial articles, one of which is kind of our fault, but we're not sorry. So let's take a look at that.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. So I'll explain a little bit. So we're doing we're doing the subsequent town meeting. We're doing a special town meeting within the subsequent town meeting. We've done this before for various reasons, but when we closed the last warrant, when I brought it to the select board and to you, I was unaware that the senior tax discount home rule petition was up for re-upping at the end of this fiscal year. So it expires in June 30th. It's a home rule petition, special act, so it has to go to the legislature. I thought originally, I talked to Victor about this, that we had time to just do this in April, and his advice is that the safest path is to do it now, to give the legislature more time, because they get bogged down with other things, and for them to turn something around in a couple months is sometimes rare. So what we decided to do is have this special town meeting. It's just tacked on to our subsequent town meeting. And so when I opened it up for that, there were two other articles that made it their way on as well. One, which would be Article 3, is the adoption of a state statute that allows us to establish a disabilities commission. And I can talk a little bit more about that. And the last article is, after your last meeting, we took the input about the leftover monies from different borrowing. We had originally said it was going to be split among the Killam project and the recal, but thought better to have it all go to the Killam for a variety of reasons you talked about last time. So we've revamped that article and put it in the special town meeting. So that article will be, when it comes up in subsequent town meeting, that will be indefinitely postponed to the special town meeting and taken up there. So the first article, the senior tax discount, is actually Article 2 on your warrant. It's the same that we've been operating under since 2016. There's some background in the warrant about the last few times that we've re-upped it. It's something that's really helped out our senior population, and I want to definitely continue with it moving forward. And Victor will be at town meeting to address any questions from town meeting members, but it's nothing new. We're not asking for any changes to it this year. It's the same exact situation that we've been operating under. So that would require, obviously, a vote by FinCom with the financial implications there. And the next article that I talked about a little was the Disabilities Commission. So the Select Board heard a presentation from Albert Pless, who, among other things, has taken on the role of ADA coordinator for us. And after doing some research, he thought it would be helpful to the town to actually have an official Disabilities Commission. We haven't had one, and it's been just an ADA coordinator, tacked on to somebody else's role for years. It was Laura Jem, who was the ADA coordinator, as well as the town clerk, election official, and everything else on her email. You've seen all the jobs, the titles that she holds. It was a good move moving it to Albert. Laura wholeheartedly agreed to do that, and Albert's really hit the ground running. So there is, the reason why I talk about it at FinCom is there'll be a little bit of a financial impact, because there could be fines issued for any sort of violations of the disabilities law and the ADA, and that would have somewhat of a financial impact. So I thought it better safe than sorry to just bring it to FinCom and discuss it a little here. There's also opportunities for grants that come with this designation, so there'll be some revenue there as well. So that was that Article 3, and then Article 4 is the one you're very familiar with, and it's in there, and it's essentially the same as the article I brought to you the last time, only all of the allocation is going to the Killam project. So police station renovation, energy improvements, Parker roof, library, all that, it's going to be dedicated to the Killam project. Sharon can answer any questions about that. So
what's the next paragraph there?
Which one?
The old paragraph, the background.
The background?
Yeah.
Why the background is there?
Yeah, because it shows it being split between the two.
That was in, let's see.
If you scroll down, I think I read that, but if you scroll down, it says, however, at their meeting, this is showing what it originally was, and then if you scroll down further, it talks about how we were wording it, how we decided to go. I think it's on the next page. Oh, actually, no,
it says
it just says, I'm
do you
sorry.
need that?
However,
Yeah.
well, I think it just explains why, because we're gonna have to indefinitely postpone the one that's on the regular town meeting because we've changed it. And so this kind of shows what it looked like in the warrant book, what they saw, and now we've changed it based on FinCom's advice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just background, and I think it's good to have it in there to show what's transpired, and I think it was good advice from FinCom. We took it to heart and made the change. So we would ask for votes on all three of those articles. Tomorrow night I will bring them to the bylaw committee and ask for the same thing.
All right, so those were Articles 2.
Yes, so, so it's Articles 2, 3, and 4 of the special town meeting.
Does the disability, does that one need a vote?
I think because I talked to Avery a little bit about it, and because there is the ability to issue fines and whatnot, it could have a fine.
okay.
So she
I
recommended
didn't look
that.
at that as a
Better,
point.
yeah, but I didn't either at first because it's just a state acceptance, but based on her advice, I figured better safe than sorry and bring it to the FinCom, so.
I see some hands.
Can I ask
Go ahead. Okay, Jeffrey, then John, then Mary Ann.
Not that I always do, but I was just curious, on that commission, is there any expense? I mean, I guess they're all appointed members, so that would not be salaried, but would there be additional staff to have someone take minutes or anything that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we'll see how that committee goes, but, you know, if anything, Albert would probably go to those meetings and he could take this, and that's sort of part of his regular job. So I don't think there's going to be any real expense to it. And if there is any, it should be covered by, like I said, any fines and grants, so it would pay off more to have it than any expense. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. So, yeah.
Jeff stole my question. That was good.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
So you're saying the fines would pay for the commission? Because I guess I had a thought. We're trying to fund inclusive sports out of some of the, which are meant for students with disabilities, out of some of the Burbank money. And then I think I heard something that, maybe it could be handicap parking fines. I don't know if maybe I heard that somewhere. I'm not sure. Pardon me? Oh, I thought someone.
No, nobody said anything.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know where the money from handicap parking fines goes, and I don't know where the money from these fines would go, but it would seem to match the intent to go to the inclusive sports. That was just a thought. But that's not written in anything.
No, and I'd heard that somewhere too. Somebody had an idea that someone would have to look into a little bit more. But on the expense side, I don't think there's really much of any expense with having this committee. It's just another committee. And like I said, I think Albert would be staffing it as part of his regular duties, so.
I'm also, I don't suppose we have any estimate of what the amount of these fines would be. I'm assuming that the residents and businesses of Reading do not go around wantonly violating the, ADA and racking up fines.
You would probably need a lawsuit. I still don't know how you would collect. You'd have to quantify what the conduct. You'd have to quantify what the conduct is and what the fine is, like they're doing with snow shoveling. So I'm not really sure.
That would have to be sussed out a little bit, but so it's something we'll look into a little bit more, and I'll have some more answers at town meeting when Albert's there and Avery's there as well. But that it's a minor thing. We have violations now. I don't think we issue, as far as I remember, Laura hasn't issued any fines. It's more education and correction is what we're looking for. But in an egregious situation, we could do that, and that would be revenue, and that would be finance. And so here we are. So.
This is going to generate the most discussion because it's the least relevant to the Finance Committee. In fairness, of course, we did already discuss Article 4 under its, other name on the subsequent town meeting warrant. So it looks like we are just taking any questions about any of these at once, which is fine because I'm not expecting that many. Yeah. There's a, tax exemption that we've had for years, and that is, I think has been passed unanimously by town meeting in the past.
Right. That's true.
There is a thing that doesn't actually involve money, except maybe in theory, maybe one time, and then there's something we suggested. I think the only hard part is figuring out who's doing the reports.
I don't have any yet, so.
Okay, well, there we go. I think
I'll take this one.
Okay. So
I'll take the least relevant one.
All right.
Can we have a motion to approve all three?
Yeah, let's get to the it's
up to the chair.
So let's we should presumably take this, with 3 separate votes. So would someone like to make a motion? Hold on, let me just go preemptively move the microphone to Emily. I won't say anything else.
Motion to recommend the contents of Article 2 to town meeting as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jeffrey. Any further discussion before we vote?
Do we need to specify that this is Article 2 of the special town meeting warrant?
Clear. I mean, I think that's understood because that's what's on our agenda, but
You said as presented.
as presented, yes, that's true. We haven't presented the subsequent town meeting warrants today. So let's not, and it won't be confusing.
I'll get the next one.
Any other questions? All right, roll call vote, starting on Zoom. Ed?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. Need more microphones. Well, budget's tight. All right, so then.
Motion to recommend the contents of special town meeting Article 3 to town meeting as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, John, for the second. Any discussion? Wasn't expecting any. Ed?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Marianne?
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. Last one.
Motion to recommend the contents of special town meeting Article 4 to town meeting as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jeffrey. Any discussion? Ed?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Enthusiastic yes from someone there. All right. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Joe Carnahan, yes. All right, so then reports. So we have to do Article 2, Article 3, and Article 4. Are we going to give a report on the one that's indefinitely postponed? I suppose we do. I'm wondering,
so.
or maybe not.
Well, you can give a report at the special town meeting, but not
No.
the.
Right, no, I'm wondering whether, because Mark was signed up to report on the one that is now going to be indefinitely
Probably not.
postponed. So you want to switch over to the one that we're doing for real? Or not? That's fine too.
Well, I'm flying in Monday night, so there's a chance I could be
Okay,
late.
all right. In that case, never mind. So.
I don't have one, so
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
do it.
All right, so Marianne can do 2.
Special 2.
Yes. Marianne, so yes, I guess I'm just doing that. That's actually the senior tax one.
Senior tax. So
Yep.
it was a vote 8-0 at the November 5th town meeting.
9-0.
9-0, sorry.
Yep.
Yep.
The gang's all here.
Are we doing subsequent or special first?
Yeah, I should say, so I think the moderator's plan is to open the special and then move it, you have to move it to a date certain, so then he'd move it to Thursday, and we'd go through the subsequent. So we probably won't get to these articles until Thursday or maybe even the following Monday, because it'd be at the end of town meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I had Emily volunteer for Article 3. That was also 9-0. And then let's see. I'm looking back at the minutes to see who we've missed, unless you want to volunteer yourself before I catch you.
Joe, I don't have one, but
Okay.
I don't, if it's, I won't be there next week, so.
Oh, you won't be there for either night?
Either night, yeah. I have
Okay,
to-
all right. Well, and some excused absence. Very well.
Can do both, since the first one is nonsense.
Sure. Let's go ahead and do that. Emily, you can get number 4 as well.
Second night.
This will probably be on the Thursday.
Yeah, it sounds like this could be on Thursday.
Probably gonna be on Thursday.
So you may be.
So I'm back.
You're back, you can do one.
Oh. Mark, you want to do the new and improved version of moving this money around? Sounds good. All right. It was credit where due. You were the one who made the suggestion, so no good idea goes unpunished. All right. Let's see. So then that, I believe, covers it for special town meeting.
Thank you.
Topics for future agendas.
When will our next meeting even be?
Yeah.
Probably not until, oh golly, I mean,
Something scribbled in December, and I think that was just to come to attend to
Attend
the select board, yeah.
Yes.
Kind of their budget planning, right?
Right, which you're welcome to do, but is not really required.
We're not making the agenda for it, so
We can
that's.
do remotely.
Yeah.
Yes, you can watch that one on RCTV. It'll be great. Or you can wait until the same presentation comes to us 2 months later. Or actually 3 months later.
In March, yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. So yeah, I don't know, what does it, yes, hold on, I'm opening the website here.
February 25th is the next one that we have a save the date for.
Yep, well, I mean, if.
February what?
25th. Okay, so that's actually interesting. That makes it, so when we did liaison reports, I forgot something, which was not the most recent select board meeting last night, but the previous one. Yes, the review of, we, the finance committee, had asked the select board to ask the state for a free review of the town's financial policies, because none of them have been, the most recent ones were updated in August of 2018, so it's been a little while. And there are a number of things for which, obviously that we have these processes, but they are not documented as policies. So there may be opportunities there. So Matt organized a call with Sharon was there, Jane was there, Karen Herrick from the select board, who's one of the liaisons to us from the select board, was there. I was there. I don't remember anyone else from our side, but then there were a couple folks from the state who talked about what they do. And interestingly, they apparently one way they like to do this is as a sort of a most of the day seminar event thing, where they get a bunch of people together in a room and have people like workshop things together, like 9 to 2 is their usual schedule apparently. So they asked us if we knew a good place to host, and Matt said, well, there's the community room at the library, which sounded like exactly what they were describing as far as the space they were looking for. So I understand Jane was reaching out to them with possible dates.
Yep. We have a couple dates that we're holding, I think at the end of the January.
All right, end of January. So this would be before our next meeting, which is why I'm bringing it up now. Presumably we would be, members of the finance committee could come. We would have to make sure, I would intend to be there, but we have to make, if we have enough of us, we have to post, so be it. We can talk about scheduling, between now and then, of course. But yeah, that should be interesting. I think part of the thing is that they do it as, they bring in like 3, maybe 4 communities that are all interested in doing a review at the same time, trying to get communities that are in some way comparable. And they try to do it geographically, and indeed many of our peer communities are in fact also neighbor communities. So that should work out well. These are going to be the towns you would think of as being similar. So that's a thing that's going to happen. And, there'll be representation from the select board and presumably school committee and so forth there. And then, yes, people from other towns as well. So we can sort of compare our experiences, and we can all cry about health insurance. All right. So that's, I guess, if we end up posting, that would be a future agenda, but we can make that decision much closer to that, since we don't have a date yet or anything. All right. I'm not hearing any reason why we need to meet between now and that policy seminar at the earliest, or the budget presentation starting this is February 25th. That's after February vacation. That's key. All right. Then in that case, we have nothing else on. Oh, we have minutes. Thank you. All right.
To approve the minutes of the October 15th meeting.
Second.
All right. Thank you. I wasn't paying enough. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Al, I heard it, and I will, state into the record now. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Joe, for the second. Any further discussion before we vote? All right, let's vote. Ed?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Marianne,
Abstain.
okay, and Joe Carnahan, yes. And that is in fact it for our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Voting, Ed,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Joe Carnahan, yes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.